I got interested in college, and it was almost like, well, I can't imagine what else I'm going to do, so let me do filmmaking. It's not like when I was 11, I always dreamed of making movies. And then I worked on some independent films in New York, you know, as like a camera assistant or a PA carrying grip equipment around. And then I made my first documentary. I was in Holland. I was filming different things. I was filming stuff with my family. But I have a cousin in Holland who is a fisherman on the North Sea. And I was like, I want to go to sea for a week and just see, you know, like have the experience. And I had my equipment. So I was like, I'm going to film my week at sea with my cousin, the fisherman, who I don't really know, but is like about my age, and it'll be a great experience. So we went to sea, and it was awful in a way because I was seasick. The waves are like 2 stories high, and it's rough. It's like really hard, but I'm like amazing. This is beautiful, like the sky, the work. These guys work so hard. You know, they don't ever sleep more than an hour, and it's this, you know, beautiful, tough, rugged life. And then the second night there was a storm, and a ship sank from the same village, and we got the call on the radio, oh, a 19-year-old fisherman's overboard. We have to go look for him. And we're looking for this, you know, this young guy basically who drowned. And suddenly it was like, I got more interested in the story and the village, and I went back a few times over the next 2 years and made my first documentary film. And then it was kind of like, all right, I think this is what I'll do with my life. However, every time I make a film, I swear it's my last one, because it's kind of hard. Before I made the film in Nigeria, I made 2 films in Iraq, which was the first time I ever went to a war zone, and was an incredible experience. It was awful in some ways. It was awful in a lot of ways. Seeing the war was bad sometimes, but also very exciting. And then it was something I was like, I think I can do this kind of work, and maybe I can be kind of good at it. So it's not like I was an adrenaline junkie, but I definitely got a bit hooked on the experience of war zone and conflict, and seeing maybe this is how I fulfill my potential with my life, this kind of work. So I came back from that, finished those films, and I started sort of looking for a story with like a certain level of danger that I could tolerate. And I saw some pictures and some video of these militants in Nigeria in this oil producing region. And visually they're very exciting. They're big muscular guys. They go around in speedboats. They have big guns. And they have all this juju, like voodoo type things that they wear, amulets, and I was like, just visually, you know, film, you're a photographer, and film their visual formats. So that got me excited. And then I researched the story, and it's about this oil producing region that's providing all of the basic, you know, the government's money in Nigeria. More than 90% of it comes from this oil. But the people in that region are living at the time on an average of like $1 a day. It's like incredibly, incredibly poor. And this was also a time 5-6 years ago when people were becoming even more aware and conscious of environmental issues, and the wars in Iraq, where obviously oil was a big part of it. So I got hooked. I got excited about the images, the tolerable level of danger, and then researched it and saw this is an important story, very important story globally. It's where our oil comes from. When I got arrested, I had been there for about 5 months. A big part of that time I actually was living in these militant camps, which are in the jungle, like up these winding creeks, of the Niger Delta, which is the mouth of the Niger River. And which was really boring a lot of the time. Sometimes it was amazing and exciting and incredibly uncomfortable, just with insects, but an amazing experience. And these are people that sometimes kidnap white oil workers, but I had made the connections and I was like a guest, and they were great. They treated me fine. But every time I'd go there to the militant camps, I would have to pass through this main sort of seaport in Port Harcourt, which is like the city in that region. And this, if you can imagine like a bustling African seaport, this is what it was like. I mean, colorful, the police were there, the army was there, the bad guys were there, all the like black market oil was going through there, which the police are like, all a part of, and the women are, from the villages are coming to market with fish, and like this is just an exciting place. And it's the access point to the creeks, which is where all this stuff is happening. And I kept wanting to film there. I had a translator I was working with at that point. Every time I'd go through there, it was like, no, you go, you get on the boat and you go, keep a low profile. But I'd been there a long time, and finally I was like, I'm gonna go film. And the first time I went, I actually talked, there was like an army officer in charge, and I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I can't tell you. He said, I can't give you permission to film, but I also don't have the right to tell you not to film. And then I said, oh, can I buy some beers for your men? And he said, yeah, of course. And it's like $20 about, which I think didn't go to his men, but I was trying to do the within that world, take the right precautions and do it the right way. And I filmed there a couple of times, and the third time, at one point this guy calls me over and says, he's like, I'm a plainclothes army intelligence guy, you have to come with me. And that was the beginning of the end. Like, I told him I had permission from that guy, and that guy denied it. And they took me to the army base, and I'm going to tell you everything. I had a girlfriend, a Nigerian girlfriend, and I finally, after like 2 hours of questioning, they're like, all right, you can have your phone back and call somebody. So there was a Sunday evening, and I was going to meet the girl. So I called her, I said, Lizzie, I've been arrested. I'm on the army base. I don't think I'm not gonna make it. She said, so I'm not gonna see you tonight? And I didn't say it, but the sentence in my mind was like, I don't think you're ever gonna see me again. Because I never saw her again. That was the beginning of 10 days where I was detained and questioned a lot, and finally kicked out of the country. The first couple of days were the worst, because the army turned me over to the police, who then questioned me all night. Then finally at like 5 a.m, they drove me to where I was staying after I had lied about one place, and it's just like getting worse and worse and worse. And they got my laptop, and I had just been lying about what I was doing there. And I was in the Niger Delta, and they said, open this document. It says Delta Boys, which is the name of the movie. And it's my application to get funding from the Sundance Documentary Fund, where I'm like bragging, I've been living in a Teke Tom's militant camp and then there's pictures of me in the camp. And at this point it's 8 a.m, and I've been, up all night, haven't eaten. I'm starting to get a bit worn down. And the policeman turns to me, he says, Andy, were you really in a Teke Tom's camp? I was like, yeah. He said, really? What's it like? I was like, look, I'm a journalist. And then they charged me with espionage. And then they turned me over to the SSS, which is like the government. It's the guys in suits with machine guns. And I was like, now I really know I'm not going to see the girl again, or any of my friends. How long am I going to be here? Is it going to be a week? Is it going to be 3 months? That I wasn't thinking of anything worse than that. I'm sure it sounded worse to the outside world than it was for me. The worst part for me was that they also arrested my translator and put him in a jail cell. He got the worst of it as far as that kind of treatment went, because he's Nigerian. I was never in a jail cell. He spent 5 nights in a jail cell. And the first night, the other prisoners made him stand in the toilet all night and said, unless you bring us X amount of money, you can't leave the toilet. And so they finally, this is at the police station, and in the morning he comes out. I'm like, you don't look too good. And he told me the story. He's like, I need some money. So I gave him all the money I had. But after a couple of nights, they started letting me out at night.
Where did you go?
Back to where I was staying, at a sort of a hotel. But they arrested the guy I was staying with, who was this very generous South African guy who was letting me live with him for free. And he ran these luxury suites for, oil workers, and there was a bar there, and like I had a great deal. And so this is, when they arrested him, this is about 36 hours into it. And at this point, I'm starting to crack a little bit, and I felt so bad. My translator I felt now I've completely lost control. This guy was running basically a hotel and bar, like single-handedly. And he'd been so generous to me for 4 months, and now he's going to jail. I was like, and I turned around, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna start crying. I can't let the police see me. I managed to get the message out. And a few good friends started campaigning. 2 things. Some of my friends, there was my editor, Aaron Soffin, he's the one who I got a message to. He called it was like 6 a.m, and he got an email from the guy I was living with. He said, Andrew's in trouble, needs help fast, been arrested. And he wakes up at 6 a.m, he's like, what am I supposed to do? And he called his dad, and his dad said he called the State Department. So that's how it started on that level. And then there's a group called the D Word, which is an online documentary community. They mobilized. Jason Gardner, who's from Hastings, helped Aaron, the editor, set up this Facebook page, Save Andy Berends from jail in Nigeria. And within a few days, it had 1,000 members. This is before Kickstarter. It was a very early social networking campaign. So the senators were getting phone calls. They said, call your senators. So some of the senators said they were getting 50 phone calls a day. They said, we've never had that for anybody before. So I think it was a confluence of I have people that care about me that did an amazing job. And it just came at this time, now we're inundated with these messages save this person, save that person, and it's all good, but back then it was the only campaign like that week. So that's partly why I think it got so big. I had been in more dangerous situations. Nigeria was dangerous. There were moments of danger. But in Iraq, I had friends who were kidnapped, and that was scarier because some of the people that got kidnapped in Iraq when I was there in 2004 got executed. Those are some of the. Now it's becoming something we hear about too often, but that was scarier than being arrested. In Nigeria, it was more how long am I going to be in jail? Not am I going to be executed or tortured. The torture in Nigeria was days of good cop, bad cop questioning. At one point I was being questioned by it seemed like the cops the police's intern or something. She's going through this like long list of questions, and she's like, please list previous work experience. I'm like, this is a job application. They were just not torturing me, but they were wearing me out. Most people wouldn't, for very mentally healthy reasons, wouldn't choose that line of work. And for me, there's good reasons and not so good reasons. You know, in some ways, it's I find it much easier than ordinary life. Not that life here is ordinary, but life in Iraq or like, you know, in conflict zones is simpler in a lot of ways. It's much easier to make decisions. It's much easier to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning because like a car bomb just went off. So for me, coming home from Iraq was actually harder than going there because suddenly I was like, oh, nothing important's happening here. So that's one of the dangerous aspects of it. You know, if I allowed myself to keep going down, I was like, I just want to go back to Baghdad, which I didn't do. I kind of worked through it and, you know, tried to explore like, you know, relearn that, you know, life here is important and exciting. But I can fall into that. Why? I don't know, like emotional reasons, mental issues, my childhood, like, there's a part of me that, you know, yeah, it's an escape. It's a very exciting escape from ordinary life, which is harder. This new film I'm making about the war in the Nuba Mountains in Sudan, I was like almost finished with the film and struggling to put it together, and somebody sent me a couple of quotes which I had put at the beginning of the film, and one is by Thomas Mann, and he says, "War is a cowardly escape from the problems of peace." To some degree, I'm cavalier about it, because that's partly how I'm able to do that kind of work, is, you know, not stay calm and not freak out over little things, and but I do take the work very seriously. Like, I kind of, in some ways it sounds like I fell into it, but I wouldn't do this work if I didn't commit to it and feel like it's important. So there's risks, and sometimes I'll take the risks and try to, you know, just have faith that, I don't like to use the word faith, but hope that if I, you know, I don't get really unlucky and have bad things happen. But so I don't mean to seem cavalier, but I do feel like it's, you know, if at all possible, just stay calm, and it'll be, you know, things are going to be okay.